Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. The first thing I want to address before we even get into this video is the fact that I've taken one hand of nails off and not the other. You know, isolation life means that I'm trying to take these off by myself and I could only be bothered to do one hand, so yeah, I'm just keeping it real. Let's be honest, you were probably going to notice it. Now that we've addressed that, we're going to move swiftly on because I think this is probably going to be quite a long video. I have never ever had so many questions about one topic in all my time on YouTube. I have had relentless DMs and Instagram comments and YouTube comments about my trip to Australia, and most of them are asking pretty much the same things, so I figured the easiest way to do this is like a roundup Q&A. Now I'm home and I can offer advice on solo traveling. This is me doing that. So I asked you over on Instagram for your questions and you went to town. So I'll hold my hands up and say this is probably not everybody's cup of tea, this video. However, you may or may not find it helpful, and if you do, then that's the aim, isn't it? Also, just a side note before we get started, all money on ads in this video is going to be donated to the NHS as part of Saffron Barker's YouTubers for NHS Heroes campaign. So there are a couple more ads in this, but do not worry, I'm not profiting off it. I'm going to send it all to the NHS after the video has earned like its ad revenue. So if you do get an ad in the middle of this or a couple of ads, watch them the whole way through and then you're doing your part as well and donating with your eyes to our wonderful National Health Service. If you're in the UK, you know what a brilliant job they're doing right now. So all the other mentions are done. Let's get straight into it. I've screenshotted a lot, and I mean a lot. I'm gonna reel them off pretty quickly. The first thing I'm going to start with is the one that was the most requested, and that was, how much did this trip cost you? And I have had that since the day that I set off in January. So I'm just going to be totally transparent with you because I think you guys know these trips aren't cheap. You don't travel to Australia for like 200 quid. You're not doing it on the cheap, and you can't really. Once you're there, you can, but getting there is an expensive thing. So I'm going to put the breakdown here. So the flights cost me £1,400. However, they were a little bit more because I did include a stopover in Singapore, which did put the price up. Generally, you can get flights from London to Australia for around £1,200, maybe a bit less, maybe a bit more. £1,200 on the flights. Then I got how much were all of your tours. So kindly, the first two tours I did were gifted. If they weren't gifted, both of them would have been £500, so that was £1,000 on the first two tours. And then the second tour, I think, without looking, is about £2,500, I think. I'll put it on screen, so add that. That's the total on trips, so that is obviously quite a lot of money. However, 100% worth it. And then whilst I was out there, I got so many questions about budgeting and how I budgeted and did I stick to a budget. I had allocated myself around £1,500. That was slightly, I underestimated how much I would spend, and I think I kind of knew that going out there. I would say, I think in total I spent just under £2,000 in the 7 weeks I was away. However, for me, I don't think that's actually that much more than what I could spend in 2 months at home if I was traveling all the time. If I'm constantly out of the house and eating out of the house, I probably could spend almost £2,000 in 2 months living like that here, because I spend about £100 a week on train tickets. So I was in my head thinking like, okay, well, I'm spending a lot, but I also would be spending this on other things at home. Obviously, that's just my lifestyle, and that is ridiculous, and I don't think that normal people spend that much on travel at home, and that is something that I gripe with all the time, but it's fine. So that meant that on average each day, I was budgeting myself around 50 British pounds, which is 100, give or take, Australian dollars, and I was not spending that every single day. I was not spending $100. However, the price out there is doubled. So like, to be honest, I didn't find Australia as expensive as I thought it was going to be. Everybody had told me Australia is so expensive, cost of living is so expensive, and I was really prepared for that, but actually I found it to be almost on par with the UK. I didn't think it was ridiculously expensive to do a food shop. I didn't think it was ridiculously overpriced to buy clothing, and I would say that in total I'd spent about £40 a day, which is about $80. However, you can do it so much cheaper. I'm gonna sit here and be like, I'm not an advocate for this because I did not have like a budget in mind. Like, I knew that I was going to go over by about week 2, so then I just was like, right, well, that's what my savings are for. I've come out here to have this trip of a lifetime, and I'm not going to limit myself because I want to stick onto this budget, which is so fortunate, and I know that I'm in a really lucky position to be able to just do that. But I could have done it cheaper. That's what I'm saying, basically. If you want to eat out every night, then you're going to be spending more, and I did eat out a lot. If you're wanting to eat in the hostel every night, you're going to save so much money. Like, it's just swings and roundabouts, and it depends who you meet when you're out there how they're living and what the whole plan is together, because I think because we were on a tour, we were eating out quite a lot together, and that really upped the price. So in total, I would say it cost me probably just under £6,000. Guys, editing this back, I'm realizing that it was actually just under £5,000, not just under 6,000. My maths is just really out. Obviously, as I've mentioned several times, you can do this so much cheaper. This did include my time in Singapore and also a couple of quite expensive extras, such as a flight over the Barrier Reef and also a tattoo, which was quite expensive. So I reckon if you were trying to do this on a budget, you could definitely do the exact same tours and trips that I did for around £3,000, just over. Obviously it depends which tours you were to book onto, but the East Coast tour, definitely. That's everything included, and that sounds like so much money, like so much money, and I'm thinking, wow, saying it out loud, it sounds like people are really going to judge me for spending that much. But honestly guys, I would do it again in a heartbeat. I don't think it was a waste of money in the slightest, and you have to consider that a sixth of that is getting there, and then obviously you don't have to do tours, you can do it completely on your own. However, I think the tours were worth every single penny, and I think they gave me the best experience of the country that I could have had. It's a personal opinion, it's completely up to you, and I know there will be those people in the comments going, I went to Australia for 6 weeks and only spent £2,000. I know I spent a lot of money, but I'd kind of gone there to have the trip of a lifetime, and I really feel like I had that, and I don't feel guilty about spending that much at all, which is why I'm telling you, because you asked. Right, we're gonna get into the actual direct questions now. No more about money or budgeting. If you have any other questions, leave it in the comments. What did you do about your 4G? How much did it cost you? How much should I save? I actually went out there with a different SIM card in my phone, so I'm on EE, but I switched to 3, and I took a 3 SIM card out there, and that worked for the first month. And then once I'd been out there for a month, they just cut my data off, and I was like, whoa, this is so bizarre, what's just happened? And from then onwards, I used an Australian SIM card, and I had an Aussie number, and I completely changed my number on WhatsApp and my number on like iMessage to an Australian number. And to be honest, I wish I'd just done that from the beginning, because you can get an Australian SIM card for about £10, and it costs you like £30 for the whole time you're there. So swap to an Aussie SIM card if you're going out there for like a long period of time. What was your least favourite thing about solo travel? Honestly, right, I'm struggling to pick one because I just had the best time. Like, I think probably my least favourite thing was when I felt like I really needed a good complain or just a bit of a down day, I didn't really have anybody to complain to, and I think that, to be honest, it didn't really bother me because there was nothing to complain about. I was having a great time. But you know, when usually at home you just have a bit of a moan about something, there wasn't really anybody I could do that to because I didn't want to be like a negative Nancy. However, on the flip side of that, I think it made me a better version of myself, because like I was being positive because I felt like I should be being positive, and then after 6 weeks I found myself just in that mindset more. Would you recommend taking a suitcase or a backpack? This was very heavily asked. If you're traveling Australia and you're doing it in a group, or you're joining a tour, or you feel like you're going backpacking so you have to take a backpack but you don't want to, don't do it. Most people I met had a suitcase and were traveling with a suitcase. I'd taken like a weird, like a hold-all style bag, but I could have got away with a big suitcase, and I wish I had done. That was my biggest regret about the whole thing, was that I did not just take my big suitcase, because I could have had so much more stuff with me. So yes, if you're thinking you don't want to take a backpack, don't take a backpack, take a suitcase. Anywhere you did not go in Australia but you would like to? Yes. The whole country. I do want to go back. I would definitely go back to Melbourne because I didn't do the Great Ocean Road, and I would love to do that. I would love to see the Blue Mountains, and I would love to go to Perth. Yeah, those 3 places I didn't go to. If you did everything again, is there anything that you wouldn't do? No, honestly, I don't regret anything that I did. There are things I'd add in. So I didn't go to Noosa. It's a town, I think, just north of Brisbane, and we didn't stop there. I really wanted to go there, but it wasn't included on my tour, and obviously that is the downside of doing a tour. But in terms of things I did and things I wish I didn't do, no, I have literally nothing, because everything shaped the experience. How much downtime would you say you got on average each day doing a tour? Good question, and some days was a lot more than others. So the first 2 weeks were really intense because I was on short tours, so they were cramming stuff in and it was like go go go. And then the trip up the East Coast, I had a lot more downtime because there was a lot of free time, there was a lot of time to chill out. You could do what you wanted, you could do nothing at all, you could go and do a skydive. Like, there was so much that you could optionally do. So I think there was enough downtime, because at the start I was filled with energy, I was so excited, and then as I'd been traveling for around 3 weeks, I was like, hey, I need a rest. Like, I need a day to just go to the beach and have a nap. Were you not scared about somebody noticing that you were a young girl on your own? Honestly, no. I think I'm just very like blasé, and it's probably a bad thing, but it just isn't something that worries me, and it should worry me more than it does. The only time anything like that crossed my mind was as soon as I got there and I had my purse stolen. But I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm scared because I'm on my own and I'm a girl. I was just thinking, I don't know what to do in this situation because I'm on my own. Australia felt so ridiculously safe. I feel more concerned for myself going out alone as a young girl here in England than I did in Australia, because it's so safe, it's so laid back, and the people are so kind that I just didn't feel worried ever. And we went clubbing and we'd come back at like 3 in the morning with people I've only known for like 2 or 3 days, and I just felt safe. The streets felt safe, the cities were clean. It was just not like the UK at all. If I walked through Hull city centre at 3 in the morning by myself now, well obviously not now because we're staying at home, but like as an adult now, I would feel scared, I would feel worried for my safety. But there, not at all. Like, it just didn't cross my mind. Something you thought would be hard or difficult but actually wasn't. The biggest one for me was definitely homesickness. I thought I was going to feel homesick, and it was a big worry. It was actually really putting me off. I was so anxious before I went, so anxious, to the point where I was like crying, and I was like, I think I've made the wrong decision, I don't think I can do this on my own. And I was genuinely so worried, because I knew how I'd felt at university and I hated it, and I hated feeling homesick, and it put me in a really low headspace. And I got there, and honestly, without a word of a lie, it was like England just didn't exist anymore. It was so bizarre. I just did not miss home at all. Obviously I miss my family and I miss my boyfriend, but day to day I was just not fazed by how far away I was. And I never felt far from home as well, which is ridiculous because I was like 10,000 miles away, but I'd never felt like I was 10,000 miles away. Does that make sense? Would you ever consider moving to Australia, as you seemed to love it so much? Yes. 100% yes. I would love to live in Australia now that I've been. Everybody told me before I went, oh, people go to Oz and they never come back, and I was like, oh yeah, that won't be me. I'll love the trip and then I'll want to come home. And when I got to leaving, I was like, I don't want to go home. And it was a big concern, because I was like, okay, like realistically this can't happen. I can't move to Australia because my life's here, my family are here, my job is here, my boyfriend is here. I know, like instantly, that if Tom said to me, let's go to Australia and live there for a year, I'd be booking flights that minute. Like, it's just the most beautiful country, and I think at some point I would love to do it on a working visa and stay out there a bit longer. I think I'm lucky because I used a travel visa, so I haven't used up my 1-year working visa, so I can go back and like live there for a year, and that's definitely something in the back of my mind. It's not anything I want to do anytime soon, but it is in the back of my mind. Is using hostels cheap? Did you have to share a room? Hostels are very cheap. I think Australia is known for backpacking. You can get hostels really cheap, not as cheap as Asia. If you go somewhere like Bali or Thailand, you can get them for like literal pennies. But in Australia, I would say the average price of a basic hostel is around $15 a night, $20 a night. It's a bed, it's not glamorous, it's not particularly clean, it's not particularly special, but you're there to sleep. And yes, I did share a room the entire time, but you don't have to. You can book into a private room. Because I was on a tour, I was only sharing rooms with people on my tour, so I always knew the people in the rooms with me. But I think if I was traveling completely solo and I was always in shared rooms and it was like just strangers, I think that would be overwhelming. But you can book private rooms. If you could only visit one place that you went to, which would you choose? The Whitsundays, without a doubt, the Whitsundays. If you go to Australia and you're just there for like a stopover from New Zealand or on your way back from traveling Asia, go to the Whitsundays because they are bloody beautiful. Did you spend more than you thought you would? I kind of already touched on this, but I would say I went over my budget by about £400, which in the long run I actually don't think is too bad, because it was mainly on like food and clothes, neither of which I needed, so I didn't have to go over budget, but I just wanted to. I don't know, I've got no real explanation as to why I spent so much money, but I was just having a good time and it wasn't bothering me. In my head, money is there to make memories and live your life, and I'm still really good, like I am good at saving up, but I also am quite a big believer in like these memories are gonna mean more to me than that in my bank account can. Do you regret doing it as a tour and not planning it yourself? This is a huge question. I got this so many times. Not at all. I would not have swapped how I did it for the world. The only difference I think I would do the tours, but have like 3 or 4 days in between each one, because I did them literally back to back. Like I finished my tour in Melbourne, I flew to Sydney that night, and I started my tour in Sydney the next morning, and it was very intense. I can't recommend the tours I did enough. I did a tour with Welcome to Travel in Melbourne, and I did 2 tours with Ultimate Travel, a week in Sydney, and then a 3-week guided tour up the East Coast with 4 days at surf camp thrown in the middle. All of them were guided, all of them had guides, so there was always a leader. They were all incredible in very different ways. They were all so different, but so amazing. If you don't like travel in that style, then obviously you could do it totally solo, but I think I would have felt a lot more out my depth, and I felt very comfortable in that environment, so I wouldn't have swapped it, no. You keep saying you regretted how you packed. Why? What would you do differently? The first thing was a suitcase. Definitely would have taken a suitcase. I also would have taken more going out clothes. I don't know why. I packed as if I was going on like a camp, and I took like just shorts and loads of vest tops, and then when I got there, loads of people had full-on nice outfits to like go out in. And I think it depends where you're traveling. Obviously, if you're literally backpacking through like Cambodia and Vietnam and those kind of places, you probably don't need going out clothes. But in Australia, it has a big party scene and a big beach scene, so I would have taken more going out clothes, less shorts and vest top, and more towels. I took 2 towels, but they just always were wet. Like, yeah, wet towels. That was a bane of my life. How did you get around places, for example, from the airport to your location? Okay, this is where the benefit of being on a tour comes in, because when I landed into Melbourne, the tour guide literally picked you up at Melbourne Airport, which was great. When I landed into Sydney, there was a bus put on by the tour, so that was great. And then when I did the last tour, we went from each destination on Greyhound buses in the tour, but Greyhound operate for like anybody, you just have to book onto them. But when I landed into Singapore, obviously I wasn't on a tour, I was just by myself. I just used Uber. Wherever I am, Uber. Now Singapore didn't actually have Uber, they had their own version, but I just downloaded that app, and then yeah, I don't know, I think I'm just quite like taxi savvy. Like, it doesn't ever bother me. You go to the airport, and then usually they've got so many taxis outside that even if you don't have a plan, you can just get in a taxi. But then again, I think maybe that is just me being so blasé. Like, I'm just not a fusser when it comes to traveling. I'm just like, yeah, whatever, that'll be fine. Yeah, we'll get a taxi. Yeah, it'll probably be alright. And maybe that's a bad quality, but it's never failed me. Like, it's always been fine. Who did you miss more, your parents or your dog? Tell the truth. Honestly, the dog. My parents know this. I was saying all the time I was out there, the difference between missing the dog and missing my parents is that I can call my parents, and I did call them quite a lot. I would say like twice a week. I FaceTimed home, but you can't FaceTime the dog. And when I do FaceTime home, she just gets confused and she thinks that I'm here because she can hear my voice. So she like goes to the window, and then that just made me sad because I was like, oh, Lottie, I'm not home. Did you think that 2 days in Singapore was enough time to explore the city? Yes, absolutely. I think any longer and you would run out of stuff to do. I kind of had 3 days there because I landed like midday, and by the end of the 3rd day I was kind of bored. But obviously I think it depends who you're there with. I think part of that was because I was totally on my own. So for 3 days I just didn't really speak to anyone, and that was quite boring. But Singapore's a beautiful city, definitely recommend. Any tips for creating an itinerary? Honestly, if you're looking to travel Australia and you don't know where to start and what to do, my best advice would be to contact Welcome to Travel, because they are a travel company that not only run the tour in Melbourne, but will help you organise your entire trip up the coast. Like, I know for a fact that Daryl, one of the guys that co-owns Welcome to Travel, organises so many Australia trips, and he is good at it. He knows what he's doing and who are the best people to travel with and which tours are the best. So I would recommend to anybody and everybody looking to go to Australia to start in Melbourne with their tour, and they will sort it out for you. Was jet lag a struggle with everything involved? No, just because I got there 3 days before my tour started, so I thought, okay, I'll get over jet lag in 3 days. Wrong, it took me about 6 days to get over the jet lag, because you're completely flipping your body clock. It's not like, oh, I've gone to America and I'm 5 hours behind. Oh, I've gone to like Greece and I'm 2 hours ahead. It's like you've just role reversed your whole day and the way your body works. So I woke up at 4 AM every day for a week, which really sucked. But then once I got used to it, it didn't really bother me. And coming back, I was so lucky because I slept the whole flight coming home, which meant I was actually okay. And it took me about 3 days to get over it when I was home. Activity wise, it didn't affect me because I'd given myself enough time to recover when I got there. How did you find actually flying solo? Would love to go, but I'm really scared of this. I had actually only ever done one solo flight before, and that was to Amsterdam, and Amsterdam is a 40-minute flight from where I live, so not on the same scale at all. Honestly, it just didn't really bother me. I quite like traveling on my own. I actually prefer being completely on my own than with people, because I think traveling is quite a weird thing. Like, you're a little bit bored. I get agitated quite easily, and people can quite easily annoy you if you're sat sat on a plane with them for 24 hours. So the fact that there was nobody there to annoy me meant that it was fine. I slept, I watched a lot of films, and I ate a lot of food. Who did you fly with? I actually booked it all through Skyscanner, but I flew with Emirates on the way there, and I flew with British Airways on the way back. If you went again, would you go for longer than 6 weeks, or was that the perfect time? I would go for longer. I would definitely go for longer. I think 6 weeks is perfect if you want to just do like the coast and you just want to go from Melbourne to Cairns. You can do that in 6 weeks, but I would have loved to have gone back to Melbourne and had a bit of an explore around the Great Ocean Road, and I would have loved to have gone down to Tasmania, and there were loads of things that once I got there I really wanted to do, but I couldn't because I'd booked my flight home, and obviously I had to have a return flight booked. That's how the visa works. But yeah, I don't know, there were things that I wanted to do that I didn't get to do. So I think if you're gonna go, anywhere between 6 to 9 weeks is a good time if you just want to travel without having to get a job. Obviously it takes more saving up. Now, having done it, do you wish you did it when you were younger or older? Honestly, I think I've done it at the perfect age. I met so many people at such different stages in their lives. There were a lot of people that had come straight from sixth form and they were on gap years, and obviously I was like the school year above them, so I was like a year older. And then I met so many people that had just graduated university and they were like 22 and they'd just gone on a gap year before starting out in work. And then I met people that were like 23, 24, 26, 29, all of them just in between jobs, and they just had like 6 weeks or 6 months off where they just decided to save up all their money and go traveling for 6 months before starting a new job. There were so many different stages of life, and it was just amazing because in what other situation would I make friends with like a 26-year-old banker? Our paths just wouldn't cross. But then actually it worked so well because everybody was at such different stages, but it worked beautifully. Yeah, I think there isn't a right or wrong age. Do it if you're old enough to do it. If you feel like the time is right, and you'll know, do it. Like, I honestly can't recommend it enough. I'm saying it to everybody. People are like, oh, I kind of want to go to Australia, and I'm like, do it, literally go. How hard is it, honestly, to meet people? If you're staying in hostels, it is not hard at all. If you're in a shared room, then you're gonna be talking to the people in the room. Obviously, the beauty of Australia is they speak English, so whether they were English or not, most people were speaking in English because that was the language being spoken in Australia. And I can imagine that's difficult if you're traveling somewhere where their native language isn't English. So it did make it easier, but I think, yeah, staying in a hostel, you're guaranteed to make friends fairly easily. And I think a really good thing about doing it solo is it does push you out of your comfort zone. You do have to become better at talking to strangers. And I wasn't bad at that to start off with, but it definitely has made me more of a chatty person to whoever now. Like, I could strike up a conversation with somebody on like a train, whereas before I would have just not done that. I think, not that I was like judgmental before, but I think when you see somebody, if you see somebody and you instantly get a perception of them, you do have like preconceived judgments of them. Even if they're not bad, you just think, oh, they look like they might be nice, they look like they might be chatty, they look a bit scary. Something that traveling taught me, and it really like kept hitting me every time I met new people, was that you just don't know a person at all. So there'd be people, I'd go into a room, and there was one night in Sydney specifically where most of the people in my hostel room were boys, and I was like, okay, this is fine. It didn't really bother me, but it was a different situation, and I was like, okay, wonder what they're gonna be like. And there was one guy who looked really gym, you know what I mean? He's like lifting weights in the corner, and I was like, oh my god, like, I'm a bit intimidated. I don't want to have to get the bed above his bed because he looks a bit intimidating, but I'm gonna have to do it. So I was just like, hi, how are you? And he turned out to be the most lovely guy, and I was so wrong about like the misconceptions I'd had. And I was just like, do you know what? Everybody here is just here for the same reason. They want to have a good time. They're here on a break or a holiday or a travel trip of a lifetime. Nobody's going to be nasty if you're nice to them first. Like, obviously you're going to get some weirdos. You are. Like, it's a given. But generally most people are chatty, most people are talkative. If you especially start the conversation, like, what's really something I learned was that you just can't judge anybody. You just can't have any preconceived misconceptions because you just don't know them. Would you travel solo ever again? Yes, this is something I got asked so much. Honestly guys, I don't think I would ever travel not solo because I met so many amazing people that I know for a fact if I'd have been with a friend, I wouldn't have met them because I would have closed myself off and I would have just been with that friend, and I would have been like, oh my god, we don't know anybody, let's just know each other. And obviously I met people that were traveling in pairs and traveling in couples, and I think that it worked amazingly and it worked fine. And if you're doing a tour, it is a little bit different, but I do think that if you're traveling as a pair and you're just doing it on your own, you're less likely to meet as many people, for example, just because you would naturally close yourself off, and being on my own forced me to have to talk to people. And I actually loved it. I made some amazing friends, and I just can't imagine going out there, having done it any differently, and I want to travel Asia, and I want to travel like Thailand and those places, and I do think I would likely do it on my own. Not everywhere, there are places that I want to go with Tom or with like specific friends that I think it would be amazing with, but for the best part, if I was going to do another long travel trip, I would absolutely do it on my own. There's nobody to get annoyed at, there's nobody to bicker with, there's nobody else to feel partially responsible for. You're just totally fending for yourself, and it's amazing. It's a lot of fun, it teaches you a lot about yourself, it gives you a lot of confidence. Okay, a couple more that I want to answer before I finish this. Somebody said, how did you avoid or cope with spiders? This was a huge question and something that actually really did put me off before I went. When I was younger, I did always say, oh, I could never travel Australia, they have spiders there, I could never go to Australia, I don't like snakes, all of this stuff. But spiders is a huge one for me because I am mad level arachnophobic. Like, I can't even deal with seeing a spider. And then I decided, yeah, I could go Australia, that's fine. Honestly guys, in 7 weeks I only saw one spider, and it was outside and it was like quite high up, and I don't think they're as common as you think they are. Obviously, if you go off backpack in the outback, you're gonna see crazy tarantulas, but if you're sticking to the like beaten down, well-known East Coast track, and you're going from Melbourne to Sydney to Brisbane, those are mainly cities, and a lot of the places, okay, they do have like hostels that are a bit more outdoorsy, but generally spiders don't come inside. I think that all the buildings are sprayed, so you don't get spiders inside. It just didn't bother me as much as I thought it would do, even though I am still crazy scared of them. Like, it has not cured my fear. It just didn't bother me as much as I thought it would, and I don't want that to be a reason anybody is put off going, because honestly, the chances of you just seeing a snake outside are very slim. That didn't happen at all. I didn't see a single snake. But yeah, I just don't think that should be a reason to put you off. Like, do not let that be the reason you don't do this trip if you're thinking about it. But how come you didn't really cook at hostels? Was it not expensive to eat out every night? Yes, it kind of was expensive to eat out a lot. I did cook in hostels a handful of times, but quite honestly the reason is, one, I'm a really bad cook, and two, the hostel kitchens were actually just never that great. Like, I didn't really want to cook in them, if I'm honest, and that's just me being fussy. And I've got a lot better with eating in like places that look a little bit gross. Obviously, I went to uni, I shared a flat with 4 boys. Like, I know that kitchens can be grim, but in that situation, obviously, you don't know those people. At least when the mess was in my kitchen in Leeds, it was like lads that I'd lived with. If you're better at stuff like that, if you're not a fussy person and if you don't mind a mess, then yeah, you could do it so much cheaper. But also, there were so many amazing restaurants that I didn't want to miss going to. Everywhere we went, there was just beautiful cafes, beautiful restaurants, and I was like, I want to try this, I want to eat this, I want to go there, because I love eating out and I love trying new restaurants. Are you keeping in contact with all of the friends you made? Do you think you'd see each other again? Yes, for the most part, I actually am still in regular contact with everybody. You guys know that I made really good friends with a girl called Tegan. If you watch the vlogs, she was in the vlogs. Shout out to her. I've spoken to her most days since I got back. I would absolutely love to go and visit her. She actually lives in Portugal. Even though she is English, she lives in Portugal, and I really want to go and visit her, obviously when all of this is over. And as for everybody else, we still have group chats that are pretty active, like not every single day, but like we keep in contact, and I would love to see them all again. We actually did have a reunion planned for April in London because a couple of the American girls were coming over to the UK, but obviously now that's not happening. What was your opinion on mixed gender hostels? I did already kind of cover this, but generally I didn't have a problem with it. It just didn't really bother me, and I don't know if that was because I'd spent a year living with boys in Leeds, and trust me when I say the flat I lived in was very diverse. We had like a gamer guy, a really gym guy, like going out all the time guy, like there was loads of different personalities in that flat, and it was like weird, but it worked, and I think that definitely prepared me. It wasn't something that really bothered me, and for the most part, if I was in a room with boys, I knew them from the tour, or it was only like one night at a time. Generally, I think hostels do try to group you like girls and boys, but when you're on a tour, like you get to pick, so it was just, yeah. What was the biggest out of your comfort zone thing that you did? I think that would have to be probably going to base camp. Now, I know this is something that's like not really that out of my comfort zone, but basically I spent 2 days in the middle of nowhere in like a wooded area that was quite a spidery location. That was where I saw the huntsman, and I was there for 2 days with no Wi-Fi. And that whole thing was very out of my comfort zone, and I did feel quite on edge, especially when I first got there. I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Really out of my comfort zone, because it was borderline like a camping experience as well, and I was just, yeah, I didn't love that. That wasn't my favourite thing I did. Did you have to have jabs or vaccines to travel? No, a good question. I did not know before I went if I was meant to have an injection to go to Australia. Turns out you're not, you're all good, and I think Singapore was exactly the same. If you are meant to have an injection, I didn't have it. But no, because it wasn't like Asia, and I wasn't travelling anywhere that was like off the beaten beaten track or like, you know, dangerous in any way. What things did you do to keep your parents happy and let them know that you were safe? I think my parents trust that I'm a very independent person anyway. Like, they know that I'm probably going to be okay on my own, even though when I went to uni, ironically, I wasn't. But I called them every like 3 or 4 days, and I texted my mum all the time. Somebody did actually ask me, how did you find the communication with Tom and with your family? And honestly, I found it totally fine, because first thing in the morning I had like 3 or 4 hours of me being awake where it was like UK evening time, so we would talk then, and then from about 5 or 6 p.m. Australia time, my parents had got up so we could talk until I went to bed. So I honestly had about 6 hours in communication with them every single day, where I would just send them photos of what I was doing, or I would update them, or if I was on the bus I would like call them. It just ended up working out completely fine. The time difference actually wasn't an issue, and I thought it was going to be a huge issue for my relationship especially, but it just wasn't, because we could FaceTime like first thing in the morning, and then like in the evening we FaceTimed and stuff, and I spoke to Tom constantly. Even when he was asleep in the UK, I was still sending him updates of what I was doing, so that when he woke up he could like read it. I also sent him postcards every week that I was away, so I think it actually was okay. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be, because I did think this could cause like a bit of a communication issue within our relationship, and it actually didn't, so that was a good thing. I mean, I'm saying it didn't, maybe Tom thinks it did, but I'm pretty sure we are on the same page and that it was like better than I thought it was going to be. Okay, final question. I thought this was a really good one actually. Would you recommend the travel company you went with for somebody who doesn't drink or go clubbing, or somebody that's a bit older? Everybody there seems really young and you seemed like you went out a lot. Right, okay, so drinking culture in Australia is a huge thing. They drink a lot, like it's just a thing. They drink goon all the time, which is like boxed wine. They drink beers and ciders on the beach constantly. However, it doesn't mean you have to. I think I really enjoyed that element of it. I loved the going outside of it. Obviously, I am not a student anymore, so I actually don't go out as much as a lot of my friends do, because I'm not at uni. So I think I was just letting off a little bit of steam, but I hadn't really had like going out time for a long while. Like, I do go out quite a lot in the UK, but I'm not like a student. I don't go to those cities where it's like £1 shots for whatever, and I was just letting that off a little bit. But you don't have to be like that. I definitely think you could go out and just have one drink or not have a drink at all, and you don't have to go overboard. Nobody's really judging you, because everybody's there for different reasons, and most people are pretty sound about that. In terms of age, I think all of the tours I did were capped at 30, and there were people like 28, 29, 30 on all of those tours, but if you're older you couldn't have done them. So yeah, but definitely I don't think age is an issue at all. If you're under that bracket, there was somebody from every walk of life, trust me. I think that's pretty much everything. A lot of them are repeats about going on my own, or spiders, or do you regret not going with a friend, and I think I've answered all of those, to be honest. I hope you guys have found this helpful, and I'm sorry it was really long. I don't really think there's any way of me even splitting this up or breaking it down, so I just hope you enjoyed it and found it helpful. If you're watching this and you've got a burning question that I haven't answered, please do leave it in the comments. As always, I'll be replying to all of them if I can do. Obviously I can do, what else am I doing with my time realistically? But I hope that you guys did find it helpful, and I hope that if you are planning a trip to Australia, you're enjoying the planning process. I loved booking all of the trips and booking the flights. It made me so excited, and obviously right now everything is very up in the air, but I really would recommend visiting Australia. This is going to be the last video on it, because I know that I've waffled and banged on about Australia for around 4 months now, but it's just because I genuinely was so happy. I've never been happier in my whole life than I was in those 6 weeks, and I can't recommend it enough. I've said it a lot, so I'm going to stop talking, but I hope you found this helpful in some way. If you did, give it a big old thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments if you have any travel plans for once all of this blows over, and I shall be back on my channel on Tuesday with a really fun slash wacky slash I think we're all having a mental breakdown video, so you're not going to want to miss that at all. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Bye.